Land back, y'all. Let's get first and foremost, let's get a land back from everyone right here. Ready? One, two, and three. Land back.
Back.
Yes.
Yeah, see, that was almost synchronized right there. That's right. That's right. That's what I'm talking about. Welcome to the monthly movie trap. We're gonna be watching Surviving Columbus today. We're your hosts for the evening, me and Sergeant Bear. Me, Chief Cheem, editor-in-chief for the Black Hammer Times, representing the colonized nation of Mexico, using he and pronouns. Sergeant Bear.
Land back. Thank you, Chief Cheem. I am Sergeant Bear. I represent the nation of Mexico. I am the Sergeant of Recruitment, Cyber Recruitment, and I'm the Chief of Minnesota chapter. And I use he, him pronouns. And yes, we're very excited to be hosting this with y'all and, watching this amazing movie. But yeah, all right.
Yes, land back, y'all. Let's make sure to be sharing this, though it's a movie, though it's lit. It is political education, y'all, as y'all are going to see right now. So let's make sure we're meeting the masses where they at. Let's get in them Facebook streets. And if y'all are sharing, make sure you drop a hashtag shared, y'all. So let's get up in these social media streets, y'all.
Bro, yes, share this in all these Facebook rooms, all that. Yes, all these groups and all that. Comment, like, share. We're doing this every month, right, Chief Cheem? Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you for a bit. I don't know if it was me, Sergeant Bear, but I think I got a little idea of what you said. But yes, let's not forget to like, comment on that YouTube. That's right. But what's up? What you got for snacks, Sergeant Bear?
I think that was actually the problem with like the sound, because I think like it's my crunches. I think that's going on with my elote right here.
Yo,
y'all already know.
He did it. He busted it. He brought the
Y'all already know we got the best snacks here.
I'm jealous. I got the basic popcorn, y'all. I got the basic popcorn. But I'll see if I can shoot through with some right now. I'm cooking up, so it'll be a little surprise later, I guess. But that's right.
Yeah, make sure y'all are getting your snacks. Get your colonized snack. We make the best food.
I don't think anyone can top the elote, not gonna lie. That's like hands down. Dang. You just like blew everyone out of the water. But let's go ahead and also get into some fundraising, y'all. You already know you're gonna get them funds to get free, and don't get them funds to really liberate ourselves. We don't want to get free tomorrow. We want to get free now. So let's see them funds, y'all. What's up? Who gonna donate today for day liberation?
Yeah, let's donate, y'all. For Hammer City, so we can be making our snacks with all of our people there, watching all these movies and fighting for our liberation, y'all. Let's get these donations. And it's a great way to support. And it's not just like just for us, but like for our people, it's a great way. If you can't join, donating is a great way, right, Chief Cheem?
Yes, and I always forget about the pledges, but I didn't today. You can also pledge. I get it. We poor working class colonized people. Let's make sure we can pledge something. All right, that's why we got a $5 from Oju. Okay. All right, that's right. I gotta open up this little chat. I can't see
$5 from Chief Federico. Okay, thank you for the donations.
Yes, keep them coming, y'all. Let me see. All right, just open. My Zoom little froze right there for a bit. I was like all panicked. But yes, let's keep them coming, y'all. If y'all can't pledge, then make sure you share. So you ain't gonna donate or pledge. You gotta get them shares in. So I want to see those hashtag shares. $25 in reparations. Yes, that's right. Y'all, those people of no color, make sure we get those reparations in. Wash the blood off them hands. Oh,
hold up. We got 10 from Admiral Shegu, the birthday revolutionary today. Happy birthday. We love you. Thank you for that.
That's right. Happy B-Day. Happy B-Day, Admiral. Serving the masses on the ground, in the air, always. That's right. The dedication is inspiring, so don't stop being you, Admiral.
Y'all better leave a happy birthday in the comments section on Facebook. Share it. Say happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, Admiral. I want to see that in them YouTube comments.
I better donate for my B-Day.
Yeah, let them know. Let them know.
That's an action item right there.
And yeah, donate to hashtag Build Hammer City or at Build Hammer City at Venmo, you know, or you can go on our website at, you know, buildhammercity.org, you know, pay on there. Yeah, keep donating. Our goal
and
is
like we said, again, if y'all don't got them funds, then we want to see them shares. Drop those hashtags shared and let us know that you out here supporting, rooting, supporting the colonized masses. But let's see some more funds, y'all. Where them reparations at? Where them donations at, y'all? We gotta get free now. We see that imperialism, colonialism is collapsing right in front of our eyes. So let's make sure that we are sharing and building for our colonized people worldwide, not just here in the Snakes, but y'all already know we're gonna have hammer cities everywhere. Ain't nothing stopping our revolution, our freedom.
I think we got another 25. I don't know if we said, oh, we got 10 from Chief I. Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you for that $10.
Okay, all right, Chief I. Thank you. Much appreciated. All them donations. Let's keep them coming, y'all. Let's keep them coming. But I do believe it's about time to get into our first part, right? All right, Dre. Every single dollar counts, y'all. Every single dollar counts. It don't matter. I don't care if it's $2, $1. Hell, if it's 50 cents, I want to see them funds coming through because I get it. I understand for sure. So thank y'all again. But yes, it is about time that we move it into our viewing of the first part. So let's make sure we all turn off our cameras so we could get better streaming quality. But yes, we'll be right back with that fire open discussion and analysis. Oh, Taliba, thank you for that pledge. Yes,
I saw that, Chief Taliba. We saw that. Thank you.
Ooh, it's freezing up a bit. But yes, let's go ahead and get off camera and dive into this first part. Give me 1 sec, y'all. My Zoom be frozen.
Always close to the earth. The traditional homes of stone and adobe. The red, yellow, and white mesa cliffs and sandstone canyons into which they blend. This closeness is in the agrarian way of life. The link is there between our land and people, our homes, our art, and our religion. It is in the colors of our skin and hair and our clothing and food, just as it is in the natural earth and sky all around.
What makes Pueblo culture so unique is its special relationship to the land. The mountains, the deserts, and the rivers are not resources to be exploited, but are a sacred landscape. We don't own the land, we belong to it.
Land is part of a ceremonial universe in literally the shrine systems that exist in the center of the community and around the community and at mountaintops as far as you can see. And it defines who you are and where you are now. But I think very much it defines the origin as well as the destination, the destiny of a person.
You can look back to the old members' pottery and you see depictions of people. You can look at petroglyphs and rock art and you see that occurrences in people's lives were being recorded. And there is that presence there that really indicates that people are aware of where they came from and who they are. And they were leaving images for other people to see.
Each family has their, own designs, that, their mothers, their grandmas, that this is the way they paint it. And so it's just passed down, it's just, we just keep on doing it. When my mother was real sick, I told her that my daughter had called from Phoenix. And I told her, I said, she did a pottery with a parrot design. That is one of our oldest designs. And I hugged my mother and I told her, oh, Mother, you're going to live forever through your designs. I said, well, you know, people will always see the beauty that you have left with us all. All this you have left. I said, don't be so sad. I said, because we will carry on this.
Some of our ancestors moved closer to the Rio Grande so that their villages of stone and adobe were strung along the river and its tributaries like beads upon a string of water. In the West, other groups concentrated around desert water sources in Acoma, in Zuni, and Hopi.
The movement through the land by the people is very significant and is part of all Pueblo myths. It's part of that emulation of movement that was seen in the natural environment. One that is always talked about in songs, prayers, is the movement of the clouds, how the rain comes from the Father source and fertilizes the Mother Earth. And then out of that, everything grows.
Pueblo life before the Europeans arrived consisted of farming and supplementing their farming by hunting. Buffalo, antelope, deer. And because this is a semi-arid country, low rainfall, they spent much of their time fasting or praying for good weather, and other times they spent dancing to ask for more animals. During the winter months they have buffalo dance, deer dance, so that they hope that more will be available when hunting season comes around.
Ipetana sus kuwa kuwa hamu yuna kajzi saya ha kaifanish eso et kuwa kashtura yu himotsi naskun jutsi et ha wetse kui ha emehe eso e kuwa hima ashtu ku temsi na namtsi kait Conquisted, coronado, emehe,
On the eve of the first contact with European culture, the Pueblo people comprised a peaceful, highly successful civilization made up of over 100 pueblos of 50,000 people speaking 8 sovereign languages. It was a multitude of differing customs, but one common culture.
We saw it in our dreams, in our dark nighttime knowings, that a white man would come from the south. We did not understand what the nighttime knew, that these men would take our cornmeal, our bodies, use them, throw them against the ground with disdain for both us and the ground, for our place, for our lives. It was a bad wind against which we tightened our blankets, closed our eyes, and waited for the wind to pass. The wind passed, but we were left with the men in metal, with diseases which rotted our bodies, with dying children. Our nighttime voices warned of more to come.
One afternoon in May of 1539, in the Zuni Pueblo of Hauiku, the Pueblo world was changed forever because of a Spanish myth, a dream of 7 cities of gold. Less than 50 years after the voyage of Columbus, this dream of golden cities waiting to be plundered drove men thousands of miles across seas of sand and stark mountains. Ironically, the first white man to contact Pueblo people was Estebanico, a black slave from Azemor, Morocco. Estebanico was the guide for Fray Marcos de Niza's expedition to find the 7 cities of gold.
He was the first black man who was representing the Spaniards and who told the Zunis when he arrived that he was representing white men they were following that were more powerful than he was, and that they had to obey things that he was asking for. And I'm sure he was asking for food, for shelter, for gifts, and probably women also. And in the meantime, had been hearing rumors of slave raids up into the northern part of Sonora, where there was many slave raids, where whole villages were killed off by the slave raiders, taking all the men, women, and children, and killing all the older men and women, and leaving, taking them into slavery. And so they were afraid that he was one of the slave spies.
Estebanico and the rumors of slave raids have long since entered Zuni legend. Over the centuries, the actual events have receded until only faint echoes remain in the stories of giants and magic rattles. But then, Pueblo history is history through storytelling, history through legend.
Siwa kai na niskon tuwa na wan ho in sana tune kwi. Lasta chila kwanti pinjante ona awan ahayutachi awan tune. Iskon ni saknak ta shato kai yato kiyam ayu yan onakke. Yamusun ahayutachi an inas na kawopona kai. Kainag ana sisitua fraatiutet at sunni ko piskep ko ashenama.
Esteban learned a few tricks in his of the trade of being medicine man, so he sent this gourd that he had that was supposed to be his medicine gourd, which had 2 feathers, one white one and one red one, and a couple of copper bells. And at that point, the Zuni chiefs, the war chiefs, flung the gourd to the ground and said, "This is not from our people. This is not. This person must be a spy."
Iskon ton hailo suhno. Ton anike na jakto. Kleini na jakto. Cheemi ton on ajante vaikka. Lekkan. Jamsi ako se jakna. San Cheemon jakto. Ho I sana ho I jutu laikka. Saati. Tu sana tuo tikka. Sipo ni koli ni pöinkä.
The Zuni treated Estebanico like any other spy. They confined him in a house outside the Pueblo walls. But one morning in May 1539, Estebanico tried to flee and was killed. When Fray Marcos de Niza heard about Estebanico's death, he turned around and sped back to Mexico without seeing the country he called Cibola. His lack of first-hand knowledge did not prevent him, though, from inventing the tale of the 7 golden cities of Cibola.
Cibola has the appearance of a very beautiful town. The city is bigger than the city of Mexico, and it is the least of the 7 cities. There is much gold, and the natives trade in vessels and jewels.
Fray Marcos's lies and exaggerations soon ignited Spanish greed for gold. 1 year later, in 1540, an expedition led by Francisco Vázquez de Coronado came to Zuni to find the treasure of the 7 cities of Cibola. Coronado brought with him 300 Spanish soldiers, 1,000 Mexican Indians, guns, cannons, crossbows, and warhounds.
Banners were waving, armor was shining. Coronado was arriving right at the most important religious period of time. They were arriving at the summer solstice for the pilgrimage. When the pilgrims are out on their journey, going to and coming from the sacred lake, nobody must cross their path, because that cuts off the rain wishes of the people that are performing the ceremonies. As they approached, the high priest and the various bow priests forming the front line spread a line of cornmeal, which is a symbol for do not enter now. Do not enter now because we don't want you to interrupt our ceremony.
And of course, they did just that. They violated the Zuni ritual taboo. And that was a terrible thing to do, and violence was inevitable after that.
Against the peaceful Zuni, European military techniques and weapons resulted in a quick victory. The Spanish, however, were bitterly disappointed. There was no gold, no precious jewels.
When the Spaniards first saw the village, which was Cibola, such were the curses that they hurled at Fray Marcos, that I pray God may protect him from them. It is a crowded little village, looking as if it had been all crumpled together.
After hearing about the arrival of the Spanish, the people of Pecos Pueblo sent 2 of their most important men, including a man who the world would come to know only as Bigotes, the man with a mustache. Bigotes led the Spanish on a tour of the Pueblos, perhaps hoping to show Coronado that the Pueblos lacked the gold and the treasures that they sought.
Bigotes was a war chief, or at least a war captain, and in the company of one of his leaders, very likely a cacique, they made plans to go out to Zuni to look into the situations themselves. And Bigotes was able to bring them out to his country to show them the place first, but at the same time, the idea of the Spaniards was that maybe there was something that they were looking for further east from Zuni.
The Pueblos were not the cities of gold the Spanish sought, but the collapse of the myth of the 7 cities of Cibola only made the Spanish ripe for an even bigger lie, the legend of Quivira. Quivira was a land where rich lords drifted along a river in gold-draped barges and ate from golden plates. In their efforts to prove the existence of Quivira, Coronado threw Bigotes in chains and set the warhounds on him. The Pueblo peoples near Coronado's camp were also learning the true nature of the invaders. Constant Spanish demands for food, blankets, and clothing, coupled with the rape of a Pueblo woman, ignited a rebellion among the Tiwa.
After the Pueblo of Arenal had been set ablaze, the Pueblo people surrendered of their own accord. As Cardenas had been ordered by Coronado not to take them alive, but to make an example of them, so that the other natives would fear the Spaniards, he ordered 200 stakes prepared at once to burn them alive. Then, when the enemy saw that the Spaniards were binding them and beginning to roast them, about 100 men who were in the tent began to struggle and defend themselves. Our men, who were on foot, attacked the tent on all sides, so that there was great confusion around it. And then the horsemen chased those who escaped. As the country was level, not a man of them remained alive, unless it was some who remained hidden in the village and escaped at night to spread throughout the countryside the news that the strangers did not respect the peace they had made.
The pueblos of the Tiwa were abandoned, like so many pueblos would be in the future, their peoples pacified by death and destruction. Coronado pushed on to Kansas, only to find that Quivira was yet another lie. And without gold, Spanish interest quickly waned, and the expedition retreated, leaving the pueblos in relative peace for yet another 50 years.
Coronado may be a knight or an explorer and a pioneer to Spanish people and to Euro-American peoples in general, but from a Pueblo perspective, he was a disaster. You know, his expedition might better be termed a destructive rampage through Pueblo country. Really, it was Coronado, by behavior, who was the savage.
So what does the conquered call her conqueror? What name does the victim give her victimizer? What is the proper name of the man who brings a bewildering storm of people, wagons, guns, strange ways, and a cold philosophy of fear into your beautiful, peaceful place? What right sound and true image conveys the psyche of the man who wreaks unspeakable sacrilege and does not know he does? The name of the conqueror is not discoverer. The name of the victimizer is not pacifist. The name of the conqueror is fear and death. The name of the victimizer is hunger and loss.
One morning in 1598, 400 soldiers, colonists, priests, Mexican Indian servants, and black slaves gathered on the banks of the Rio Grande, hundreds of miles to the south of Pueblo country.
On April 30th, 1598, day of Ascension of our Lord, at this Rio del Norte, Governor Don Juan de Oñate took possession of all the kingdoms and provinces of New Mexico in the name of King Felipe.
The Spaniards who came into the Southwest were imbued, as were all Europeans of the Age of Discovery, with the peculiar notion that they owned the whole heaven and the whole earth, and that any lands that were not already occupied by Europeans were theirs by right of discovery to do with as they wished.
When the Spanish arrived in New Mexico, they established their first capital in San Juan Pueblo. It was clear that this group of invaders was different from Coronado's expedition. They brought their families, mission supplies, wheat seed, fruit trees, and thousands of horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, and chickens. The Spanish were here to stay.
When the Spanish were coming from the south, I suppose that was where they were coming from, each pueblo where they stopped at, they were driven off. And then when they came to San Juan, they were on the other side of the river, and the people had heard about them being driven off from the other places, so they were going to do the same, and they had a meeting. But then the governor that they had there then was one who had compassion, and he talked to his people, and he said, why do we want to treat them in this manner. They have families, they have children to raise. They have to feed their families, and we can't be mean. We'll let them stay on and let them raise their family, let them raise a crop.
The reason we're called Pueblo Indians is because when the Spaniards came through our country, they found our Indian people living in towns and in villages. So Pueblo is a Spanish word which means town or village. They classified us, their only classification they knew, of course, was Pueblo Indians or town or village Indians.
One of the first things the Spanish taught the San Juan people was the dance of the Moors and Christians, a dance that celebrated the invincibility of Spanish arms and European religion. Although the dance has changed over 400 years, the Matachina is still being danced in San Juan on Christmas Day.
The Matachina dance is known to us as Matachina and represents Christianity, and the main dancer represents the king, and the little girl that dances with the men represents the Blessed Virgin Mary. And there are 10 dancers, and these dancers represent the 10 beats on the rosary. This is how we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, and he's coming into the Pueblo, and basically reminds us that we not only have our traditional way of life, but the legacy or the tradition of being Catholic is passed on to the people.
In the Catholic Church.
Kai mi I guess the way the eco castora it's dead that I guess they passed. So MFF meek tai ziwe the missionaries I guess the keep ziwe a missionary came. So we tai chokoi. So if he they wanted to Christianize the people here, the tribe here.
We have to look also at who were the people who came to settle. Although they were families, this place was not settled by Spaniards who were tied to being farmers, tied to the crafts or anything like that. They were basically people who wanted to colonize and use an available labor source here.
We send people out every month in various directions to bring maize from the pueblos. The feelings of the natives against supplying it cannot be exaggerated, for they weep and cry out as if they and all of their descendants were being killed. The Spaniards seize their blankets by force, leaving their poor Indian women stark naked, holding their babies to their breasts.
Land back, y'all. All right. It's a great first part. Yeah. Everybody come back on camera. Let's get into this discussion. All right. Hey, Chief Cheem, what'd you think about, about this discussion, or, about the first part of this, the first part of the movie?
Land back, y'all caught me munching. But no, yeah, like that, one thing that really stuck out to me, like that anthropologist right there just now really laid out how these people meant nothing but like death and genocide for like our siblings, right? And it was like, yeah, like everything that, even the generosity that was given to them, the absolute generosity and trust that was given to them, which we see time and time again, right? Especially with the book trap that you be hosting, Sergeant Bear. Like it just shows the truly wonderful nature of our people, and it was just like you know, taken advantage of by these cornstarch crusaders. You feel me? By these people of no color. Like yeah. But what about you, Sergeant Bear? What's up?
Yeah,
What you got for us?
yeah, and like I'm just thinking about like the beginning, like the quote where it's like, you know, we don't own the land, you know, we belong to it. And yeah, I'm excited to see this later, but like it kind of like talks about that, and we like see that relationship that, you know, indigenous people not only here have, but like everywhere, right? Like we don't, like you can't own the land, you just can't, you know, but they don't see that, and that is such a huge, and even now, like contemporary times, like they don't see that, you like they just think you can just own things. Like no, like we live with the land. And yeah, and like also, yeah, we talk about that also in the book trap. Yes, we talk about that in the book trap a lot, like just that dynamic throughout, because this is like, you know, in the 1500s 1600s, you know, later on we talk about like 1800s around there, but it's still like the same, like they think they can just like come and like take, and like, you know, that very backwards thinking. And also how like yeah, the Spaniards weren't like craftsmen, and like they weren't like farmers, things like that. Like they just solely came to like take these resources, the blankets, the corn, maize, and just like not, yeah. And this is like a very like common thing. Like also this was noted with like when Europeans went to Africa too, like they noted how, oh wow, they're so amazing, like craftsmen and all that. And then they just like use our labor and the relationship that we have with, you know, the land, and just, you know, taking it from us. But yeah, that's what I was thinking in regards to that. Yeah,
Sergeant Bear, beautiful analysis. That's right. That's right. We're gonna go ahead and open it up for discussion. Open discussion. Let's see what brilliance y'all got for us. Drop an X in them chats. But we have 1 minute to speak, and when our 1 minute is up, we got that little ding. I don't know if we get that queued up, but you know, it'll go like maybe I don't even know if we have it actually. So let's keep it to 1 minute, y'all. Land back. Go ahead. Chief Oju, go ahead.
Yes, I'll keep it short. Oh, dang, I'm already done. No, land back. I was gonna just say that, but like seriously, that yeah, it's just kind of, it's just so hard to see just how much. First, how many indigenous nations were here on Turtle Island, and then to see how much of the culture of all these nations are so infected by the colonizer, and that like they literally have like just left a stamp on all of us. And just that dance is what threw me off, threw me off, because just to see how, like, you know, it's not the same, but to see that version practiced today is yeah, it's really like disappointing and heartbreaking. But it's like we're trying to like literally come out of a shell that was like put onto us by the colonizer, and just, you know, we're trying to relearn our old movements, our old ways to come out of it. And yeah, I believe in our people to do so. But that was hard to see. And back.
Land back. Next up, we got Chief Federico. All right, bless us up, Chief.
Yeah, land back, full unity, and yeah, just this is definitely credible political education. Really shows like what was done to our peoples and continues to be done across these lands, right? Because make no mistake, like these are the same people that we're fighting, right? They come in, they kill, they rape, they loot, and then they settle, right? And then they write our history, right? They write the false history about us. They propagate it against us to divide and conquer us continuously, right? And it's what they're doing across the world. And then even these advanced weapons that they had, like what they do is they come into our communities, they lie, they come as a friend, and then they, you know, get us to teach them their ways, and then they steal it to kill us, right? That's what they've been doing for hundreds of years. Those guns, those weapons they got from Asia, then they stole them, turned around, used them against Asians, and then, you know, the rest of the colonized world, because that's what they do for hundreds of years. So it's the same colonial system, and they keep doing it. So, you know, that's why, you know, as colonized peoples, as indigenous peoples, we unite like with all, like, you know, despite our tribal divisions and like the divisions with other colonized communities. Land back.
Damn, Chief Federico, you was popping off. That's right, that heat, that fire. I knew it, but wonderfully said, yes. Next up, we got Chief Ren.
Land back. Yeah, full unity with what Chief Federico and Oju said. This PE is really powerful. The thing that really stuck out to me, and what I was talking with Watakame about, was like how there's different names. There's so many different names for like colonizers in like different languages and stuff. Like it changes, and I think the reason why it changes is like I put this in the YouTube comments. Like there's no words that fully grasp everything that they've done. Like there's nothing that like fully, like we can describe in like paragraphs, literally like writing whole essays about what they've done, and it still wouldn't fully grasp everything, because like they've literally like demolished civilizations, like languages, like food systems, like so the earth alone, like everything that they've done, like, and I think that's what like Black Hammer is like up against, but that's also like why we have to unite, and like why this is so important, because like without us, our unity, like how the reason why there are so many languages or like so many ways of describing them is because of like why like yeah, basically we just need to unite. I'll land back.
Land back, yes, Chief Rand, that's right. We got mayo packets, mayo monsters, all of these, like, you know, cornstarch crusaders. But yes, the list is literally endless. Aurora, you up next, comrade.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I completely unite with what everyone said. And I also want to piggyback on what Chief Federico said about how they come in as friends. That's exactly what white leftists do. They come in and act like allies, and then they steal everything from us, our ideas, the way we organize. And then they turn around and flip the script. Like, well, you alienated me because I'm white. Like, and then they act like the victim every time. So I think that was like that's spot on, and we have to be able to see that from a mile away. Land back.
Land back, yes, that's right, exactly. Like Chief Federico said, that's why we got the reparations corps. It's time we start leading and they start listening, paying up, washing that blood off their hands. But looks like we ran out of X's here. If anyone don't want to drop that last X, then I believe we can move it. Going once? Going twice? All right, I'm gonna keep eating my popcorn. Oh, real quick, I wanted to show y'all my go-to chain. Here it is. There it is. Ooh, there you go. Okay. That's my snack for today. my whole meal for today. But all right, y'all, let's get back off camera and get into this next part. Excited for this. Land back.
At Acoma, the demands of a small Spanish force, led by Oñate's nephew, Juan de Zaldivar, provoked a fierce battle. Pueblo warriors poured out of the houses and killed Zaldivar and 13 other Spanish soldiers. When he heard the news, Oñate moved quickly to crush this rebellion by ordering Zaldivar's own brother, Vicente, to lead the attack on Acoma.
Many of the Spanish soldiers who were there were either thrown off the mesa or were in some way hurt by the Acoma Indians. His brother came in with the idea of revenge, with the idea of getting back at these people who had killed his brother and had hurt so many and killed so many Spaniards.
Led by Vicente de Zaldivar, 70 Spanish soldiers arrived at the steep cliffs of Acoma and methodically prepared for a European war without quarter. Against cannons, muskets, crossbows, steel swords, and war horses, the Acoma people held out for 3 days.
Vicente de Zaldivar ordered the kivas and living quarters to be set on fire. Many were burned alive in those places, men and women, some with children in arms. Others were suffocated by the smoke.
Those who refused to surrender were dragged before Zaldivar and hacked to pieces, their limbs, heads, and bodies thrown over the cliff. The Spanish lost a single man, while 800 Acamas died. A line of 500 men, women, and children were led down from the Pueblo and brought to Santo Domingo to stand trial before Oñate for rebelling against the King of Spain.
The males who are over 25 years of age, I sentence to have 1 foot cut off and to 20 years of personal servitude. The males between the ages of 12 and 25, I sentence likewise to 20 years of personal servitude.
Shocked by the severity of the sentences, the Spanish settlers brought charges against Oñate and Zaldivar, who were found guilty, fined, and banished from New Mexico. Still, these European invaders continued their efforts to impose the feudal world of 17th century Spain on the Pueblo people. We were considered the property of an unseen king and his armored servants. We were forced to pray to a cross and European saints and follow the rules of an invisible pope and his all too visible missionaries.
The church and the state in the early colonial period had similar goals. I would say the political perspective was, of course, one to subjugate politically and to control within a feudal system, and the church's view was to Christianize and to convert and to save souls. And these two coincided as the encomienda system was formalized and implemented where they could use Indian labor. There were your missions, which were to missionize, right, to Christianize.
The encomienda and the repartimiento systems were the basic economic systems that were imposed on native people of New Mexico. And all of a sudden, there comes these invaders who begin to tell you, well, things are going to change here now. You can't leave your pueblo. You can't travel as far as you want anymore because we don't want you leaving your area.
They began to cut up the land, and for the Pueblo people, they were told how much of the land was now theirs. So you get the idea of owning other people for yourself. What an incredible, strange, foreign notion, when we talk about that other world.
The Spanish imposed a governmental system on the Pueblos, whereby governors ran the civil part of tribal life. In 1623, the Spanish gave each Pueblo governor a cane as a symbol of authority.
One of the most symbolic gestures that has elevated this whole notion of our status of sovereign entities over the last 400 years has been the issuance of canes by various sovereigns of the world. A traditional passing of authority annually among Pueblo officials is a passing of the canes, which symbolize the sovereign status of our governments.
Oh, emi ki kum cha ya zo. Ki
Cha.
cha ya zo ki.
Oh, emi hey again.
Where for that church cha ya zo.
I remember elders in my family talking about
Boys and 8 girls.
how when the mission at Acoma was being constructed, being built,
4
how
boys and 4 girls.
Pueblo people there had been basically placed into slavery and made to work until they dropped dead. And yet, ironically, now, 300-400 years later, we celebrate, with the feast days. We dance inside the mission. We revere Christianity.
Well, when the Spaniards first came up into northern New Mexico, one of the first things that they did was to build churches. And they utilized Indian labor to build those churches and later on to maintain those churches. And the labor was not voluntary. A parcel of land was set aside for the priest in which they would plant corn, cultivate corn, squash, and things of that sort to maintain the missionary household.
The church as a whole, because of its theological position, would look at the Indian religion as probably superstition and witchcraft. So from time to time, people were punished for that. And I think the church was concerned with creating a unified worldview. And it's not only converting people and saving souls, but also getting a perspective from the Indians that would support the medieval Catholic worldview of the Spaniard.
The missionary program involved the attempted destruction of all semblance of the indigenous religions, the filling in of kivas, the destruction and burning of Kachina Mass, the outlawing of the dances, the reporting of people who were involved in the practice of the traditional indigenous religion.
There were 3 missions that were built on Hopi during that period of time. The priests were so isolated that they pretty much made their own rules. They made claims on women reaching puberty. They were said to be the first to have these young women reaching the age of puberty before the girls were free to participate in the rest of the social marital institutions of Hopi. And that this apparently, according to the stories, was the last straw.
In their efforts to destroy our religion, the missionaries tried to separate sons from the knowledge of their fathers and daughters from the world of their mothers. Christianity would have destroyed our culture, our relationship to the Earth Mother herself. We did not consent to the eradication of our world. Gran Quivira Atampiro Pueblo, abandoned in 1672, was one of the victims of the great contraction of the Pueblo world. It was a time when the world was out of balance. It was a time of death. The rain ceased to fall. The corn withered. Thousands of Pueblo people died in a great famine.
For 3 years, no crop has been harvested. Last year, 1668, a great many Indians perished of hunger, lying dead along the roads, in the ravines, and in their hovels.
That year, thousands died of starvation in Gran Quivira, Curay, and other pueblos. The elders and the children were the first to die, leaving a society bereft of its past and its future.
Giving food to the missionaries and giving food to the Spanish colonizers had a tremendous impact on the Pueblo economies. For example, at Taos, where the climate varies from season to season, and some seasons where you're able to reap a lot of corn and other years not being able to do that. Some years being lean in terms of hunting for venison and some years not. So it did have a tremendous impact on the economy. Many people were not eating as well as they used to.
The Apaches had mastered the horse, upsetting the balance between the Pueblo peoples and their nomadic neighbors. Their raids on the Pueblos came with increasing frequency. And then there was disease, a disease that struck both Indian and European. The Spanish attributed the deaths to witchcraft by Pueblo sorcerers. In 1675, the Spanish governor finally heeded the calls of the missionaries and arrested 47 alleged sorcerers and brought them to trial.
Naturally, the case was against them, and 4 men were condemned to die, and the others were to be whipped publicly. One of the men that was whipped was a man from San Juan Pueblo whose name was ewropeans, and the Spaniards called him Pope. He began to think about what should be done to retaliate.
Pope decided to go to Taos Pueblo, far away from the center of Spanish activity, and Taos needs to be given credit for giving protection to him and all the others that were planning the revolt.
The decision to fight, to go to war, probably took a lot of soul searching, a lot of input from various factions, various groups, various clans, various leaders within the Pueblo. And then to unite all the Pueblos, to unite each of these sovereign nations in a united effort to drive the Spaniards out of their lands. There must have been an awful lot of suffering that occurred that eventually drove them to that point.
It was a very ingenious plan. First of all, to communicate this plan to have the rebellion. It consisted of messengers running to all the various pueblos in New Mexico and into Arizona and informing them that this is going to happen, that they would create their own little rebellion within the village and kill the intruders.
The 3 spirits told Pope to make a cord of maguey fiber and tie some knots in it, which would signify the number of days that they must wait for the rebellion. The cord was taken from pueblo to pueblo by the swiftest youths under the penalty of death if they reveal the secret.
2 young men were appointed to carry the knotted rope, and each day as the sun came up, a knot would be untied. And on the last day that the knot was untied would be the day the action would begin. It didn't happen the way it was really planned. The 2 boys were discovered. They were brought to Santa Fe for trial. When the Tusuki people learned about it, they became extremely alarmed. Consequently, they killed a Spaniard that was at Tusuki. This was the beginning of the first successful revolt by a Native American organization against the Europeans.
On August 10th, 1680, the Pueblo warriors, by design, attacked the churches. August 10th happens to be St. Lorenzo's Day, and so the people knew that both Indian and non-Indians would be congregated in church. And it was in retaliation for what the church and civil authorities were doing to the Pueblo people.
Most of the villages, the churches were destroyed, and those people who were accepting of the Catholic faith were ousted from their villages, if not killed.
All of the Pueblos under the Spanish rule rose up against the yoke of Spain, and in some cases, as if Hopi killed the priests, the Franciscan priests.
Within 3 days, over 400 Spaniards, men, women, and children, lay dead. 21 of New Mexico's 33 priests were killed. Churches, crosses, saints, and the symbols of Christianity were burned and destroyed. The Spanish governor and most of the colonists were trapped in Santa Fe, besieged by thousands of Pueblo warriors.
Indians from the pueblos of Pecos, San Cristobal, San Lázaro, San Marcos, Galisteo, and Cienega are one league from the Villa of Santa Fe, on the way to attack it and destroy the governor and all the Spaniards. They're saying that now God and Santa Maria were dead, and that their own God, whom they obey, never died.
They had a few days of standoff here. The Spanish guns, arquebus, against Pueblo bows and arrows, clubs and stones. Naturally, the Pueblos were at a disadvantage, but soon decided that the only way they could dislodge the Spaniards were to cut off the water. A few days later, the Spaniards had no water for themselves nor their animals.
Every day of the 9 days which the siege of Santa Fe lasted, more and more people assembled until the beasts and the cattle began to die because we had been entirely cut off from water. Being agreed that it was better to die fighting, his lordship advanced, and invoking the name of the Virgin, he routed and overran them and massacred more than 300 Indians. 47 Indians were taken prisoner in their houses. They were executed. But finding ourselves out of provisions with very few horses, threatened by the enemy and not being assured of water, it is necessary to leave. We have decided to withdraw.
The Pueblo peoples had a chance during the siege of Santa Fe to wipe out all of the Spaniards. And they stood to one side when their siege worked, and the Spaniards silently filed out, heading southward on their remaining horses and carrying what possessions they could carry. The Pueblo warriors made no effort to attack them. They just let them leave.
We are at quits with the Spaniards and the persons we have killed. Those of us whom they have killed do not matter, for the Spaniards are going, and now we shall live as we like.
The period after the revolt, it's recorded that the Pueblo people went down to the river, cleansed themselves. They did away with many of the things that the Spaniards brought. For example, they burned the orchards and tried to again be pure Pueblo people again.
It was a very joyous time for them. It was a time of relearning what had been lost in the past. And there was also a sense of threat as well that existed, because they knew that there would be other people to come in. They knew that they weren't completely safe from the Spaniards.
During the 12 years that the Pueblo world was free from European domination, the Spanish sent a number of armed expeditions to reclaim their kingdom. In the Pueblo of Alameda, the Spaniards found a man who, unable to flee, hung himself rather than be captured by the Spanish.
There would not be much of a Pueblo culture left over if the Pueblo people of 1680 had not taken the action they did. They acted to save their culture, to save their integrity of communities, and to save their self-respect, which the Spaniards were rapidly withering away with their onslaughts on their religion, on their labor, on their politics, on their very independence. And so it's in that sense, the sense that Pueblo culture survives late into the 20th century, that we must honor and commemorate the Pueblo Revolt of 1680.
There was no mention in the textbooks that I read of the Pueblo Revolt. There was never any mention of the kind of treatment of Pueblo people at the hands of Spaniards in the textbooks that I read. There was never anything said about our survival, our efforts to survive. And I think it's only now that our story be told.
Freedom gives life. Freedom is life. The Indian Pueblo Revolt of 1680 gave life. We exist today as Indian communities because of the revolt.
Now I'm back, y'all. Let's go ahead and get back on camera. Let me turn on this light because my lighting ain't good anymore. It's getting nighttime now. But what's it called? Yes. There you go.
See those beautiful faces come back on camera.
Yes, let's see some more faces, y'all. Get ready to drop that more of that brilliance that I know y'all got for me. But yes. One thing I noted again, from this little section, once again, of course, the generosity of the indigenous peoples, right? They just let the Spaniards flee. Like, I don't think it's gonna be the same this time around. You feel me? I see Chief Federico smiling over there. They're like, if that was me, I would have been. Yeah, I see him. Federico ready. But yeah, like again, it's that when the Pueblo people really had to unite and make that decision to go to war, right? And they did it because all of the suffering, the pain, all of that they had to go through, right? So it was like a no-brainer at that point to go to war with these savages. But what's up, Sergeant Bear? What you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about how they changed the way our relationship with labor, through exploitation, right? Because I mean, there's nothing wrong with labor, right? Because we have a relation with land. We do labor and so on, but they changed it to exploitation, and that's when things started to really change, because now we don't have control over our lives, labor, land, resources. And that's why it's important that we uphold our principles of unity, and our first principle, which is that making sure that we have control over that. And I just think that was such a pivotal part, because that's when we started to get exploited, right? And so on. And also just how again reiterating how they changed our perception of our culture and so on, and just how deep colonization is. And even after they did the revolt, right, they were and this was for 12 years, right, they were very deep in that decolonization process, right? And now imagine now, right, so it's important that we keep that in mind, and that it's a very ongoing process, and these things are very deep. But yeah, we just we're powerful, we're strong, and we're brilliant. But yeah, let's drop some X's, y'all, again. Yeah, everybody's gonna have a minute to speak, and then when you hear the ding, it's time for the next person. But yeah, drop an X, slam back.
Don't be shy.
Okay, Chief Jucha, go for it.
Laying back, y'all. I want to just give my full unity to what Sergeant Bear said, right? This morphing of our understanding of who we are as the original peoples of Turtle Island and Pachamama. Colonized people don't have any understanding of their religion, of their ancestral knowledge, right? Just they're things that we don't think about how we view time, right? How we view the days of the week, how we view everything. All of these relationships that we currently exist in are colonial, and it really just, I guess, pushes further how decolonization is a process that is gonna tackle every single aspect of y'all's lives. You feel me? A lot of people like to talk about decolonizing this, decolonizing that, but when it comes to decolonization, we understand that it is first and foremost about the land, right? Our relationship to it, our relationship to the labor that we do as people of these lands. Full unity, yes. It was. I didn't even know, right, this history, and this is the most insane thing, is the lack of knowledge of this type of struggle within these lands. Land back.
Thank you. Very, very deep. But all right, Chief Oju. Ooh, here's something fire already. Chief Oju, go for it.
Limbeck, yeah, no, I believe I understood this right in the beginning of this second part that we watched. The thing with the canes, and that the canes were given by colonizers to the indigenous people in order for them to understand, like, in order to like create governors out of the indigenous people. And I thought like that is something that's just, it's such a prime example of what colonizers do to this very single day, right? Is that like identifying people to be the middle people between colonizer and the colonized in order to make sure that they have someone to report to. Then even if it's not even that, at least to divide the people in a way that causes them to lose faith in their own forms of governance. Like they already have forms of governance that have been working just fine up to that point. And then they're like, here's your power cane. And the guy don't mean nothing to them, but then they convince people to take it, and then it causes this division, and then causes traitors, people who are going to report to these people who gave them the power cane, and you saw how many that they had, and none of them even looked like they were. They all looked like European carved, like they didn't even look like Pueblo items, So it was just I just see that tactic used over and over again to this very day. Laying back.
Giving us these like illegitimate forms of like governance and so on. But yes, thank you for that, Chief Oju. And all right, Chief Federico, let's see what you got to say.
Yeah, full unity with what was laid out, and like you said, Oju, like the use of these middlemen, right? Like that's why we make it so simple at Black Hammer. Like it is colonialism, and it's colonized versus colonizer, right? Because that allows us to, can you hear me? To see exactly like who is against us, right? And anyone who's working for this colonial government is a sellout to us, of us. They work actively against us to uphold this colonial system. And I thought this especially laid out like the colonized unity that was formed, right? Like all of these Pueblo villages coming together to fight against the colonizers, they formed that unity. And like the narrator was like, it came after all of this sacrifice, right? That's what really woke them up to this understanding that colonized unity was the solution to fighting the colonizers, right? And so Black Hammer is taking that a step further and saying it's not just indigenous peoples and tribes that need to unite, but it's all colonized peoples around the world. And that's what's going to set us free. And I thought that was a beautiful display of this. So laying back.
Yes, full unity with that. Full unity with that. Yes. Thank you for that. Next up, Chief Aurora.
Yes, full unity with everything that was laid out as well. And I also wanted to deepen what was laid out last in that last clip, where they said like they hadn't read about any of that in their textbooks in history. And we find that out in Black Hammer all the time. Like, I wasn't taught about any of this in school. I was actually taught the opposite. Like, all of the indigenous people just disappeared. They were wiped out. That's what I was taught. So I think it's really important that we take like things that we are learning here and we actually internalize them. And we realize like every time we've had to revolt and had to rebel, we've won. Because colonized unity is what keeps us winning, and it's what keeps us strong. And there's that saying, history is written by the victors, but that's not true. History has been written by the colonizers. And every single time, they've lied. And that's all they know how to do is steal and lie and kill. And I am trying to teach that, and it's hard for them to understand, but yeah, lamb back.
Lamb back, comrade. Yes, that's right. All they know is lying, cheating, stealing. Colonized unity will save our community. Last X we're going to take for now is Chief Taliba. Go ahead. Bless us up, Taliba.
Back. I wanted to unity with what everyone has said so far. especially Comrade Aurora was saying, you know, the colonizer knows to unite and organize, to steal and lie and kill us. So we have to do the opposite, period. You have to use that colonizing to take back what's ours. Because when they get a hold of it, all they do is use it to divide and conquer it. Like, basically, yeah, we take back what's ours and use it to unite and win back our liberation, period. And that includes the stolen knowledge, like from this amazing documentary that we're watching tonight, because I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about the Apahua peoples or, you know, what the Spaniards was doing in this area. And the fact that they were like, yeah, we're the ones with the power here is because they knew how to divide us by stealing what's ours. Christianity was something that was practiced by colonized people before it was ever picked up by a colonizer. But it's used to this day to keep divided. So yeah, we got to reverse that. We got to unite and organize, out-organize our oppressors to, yeah, win back what's ours. And also, I really appreciated that War of the Fleet tactic of like letting the Spaniards go off on their own, because like they could have mollywopped that, but I mean they could have, you know, fought back, but they said give them a way out. That's totally some War of the Fleet tactic, or not War of the Fleet, Art of War tactics. So salute, you know, for that brilliance, that colonized brilliance. But yeah, I just really appreciate this documentary. I'm back.
Thank you for that, Chief Saliba. Thank you. And yeah, y'all, because like a lot of us, we don't know about this, right? So it's very important that, you know, we stay active and we, you know, learn and read about our, you know, revolutionary ancestors. And y'all can do that every Sunday. We got our book trap. Y'all already know at 11 p.m. EST. So, you know, come through. And yeah, we're actually like learning about, you know, like after like this and when the different Europeans came to, you know, Turtle Island and so on. But yeah, y'all, AM, yes, AM. But all right, let's move it along. But yeah, thank y'all again. Brilliant summations and so on. But let's go to part 3. Let's make sure we turn our cameras off.
Today as Indian communities because of the revolt. Now our Pueblo people knew it was the time to be patient and determined to be enduring. Now we, the people, were to keep struggling for the existence of all things in creation.
The Pueblo Revolt brought 12 years of freedom for our people. But in 1692, Don Diego de Vargas visited the Pueblos with promises of peace, and our leaders agreed to let the Spanish return. Each year in Santa Fe, the so-called peaceful reconquest of New Mexico was celebrated, complete with Indians dressed in Hollywood costumes and looking happy to see their conquerors. Unfortunately, the real reconquest began when de Vargas returned with settlers, priests, and cannons.
The coming of de Vargas back into New Mexico has been depicted as one of being a bloodless conquest. But we know different, that de Vargas was just as brutal as Coronado and Oñate. However, we've managed to survive, and I think there's a lesson there for all peoples in terms of enduring atrocities imposed on people.
The first thing that de Vargas did after a long night of siege of the Villarreal de Santa Fe was to order some 80 Pueblo Indian warriors to be shot, summarily shot. And the remaining 400, mostly women and children, were ordered to be partitioned out to Spanish families to serve as servants.
2 years later, another revolt broke out, only to be put down by Governor de Vargas and his Pueblo allies. While individual Pueblos would continue to resist whenever their way of life was threatened, the Spanish had regained control, but they had also learned tolerance and respect for the Pueblo peoples. While the relationship to the Spanish improved, the world was still violently out of balance. Once living Pueblos were now abandoned to the wind. A Pueblo world that once held 50,000 people and 100 Pueblos was reduced to 14,000 people and 22 Pueblos.
The whole land is at war with the very numerous nation of the heathen Apache Indians, who kill all the Christian Indians they encounter. No road is safe. The Apaches hurl themselves at danger like a people who know not God, nor that there is a hell.
Apaches never so it's to find a way of protection. So it's
By the 18th century, violent raids had become all too common by other nomadic tribes, the Navajos, Utes, and the fierce Comanche, who were not only mounted on the descendants of Spanish horses, but armed with French guns.
With the introduction of the horse, it just made it more difficult for the Pueblo Indians to secure their pueblos from outside intervention.
It enabled the mounted raiders to appear and disappear very quickly. It made them highly efficient as raiders as well as warriors. The Spaniards and Pueblo peoples needed to pool every resource at their command to protect themselves effectively.
The need, just based on survival, for Pueblo people to not only defend themselves, but defend themselves very well. There grew among the northern Pueblos a class of warriors because of the many, many different kinds of engagements which they were called upon, either individually or through acting as a part of the Spanish militia. The Tewas especially, and also the Tiwas in northern New Mexico, became very well known for their fighting ability.
The alliance between the Pueblos and the Hispanos after 1692 was in a way an alliance of convenience, I would say, in terms of protection against the Plains Indians or the Indians who were roaming the Llano Estacado and the plains, and this forced the villagers in both villages, the Indian as well as Hispanos, to come closer together.
The alliance of Pueblo Indians and Hispanic farmers and ranchers would last into the 20th century, but its roots went far beyond the need for defense.
I think the alliance between the Pueblo people and Spanish really was part of working with the land. When the Spanish came to the Southwest and found that there was no gold here or wealth, great riches to be had, they still had to survive, find a way to survive, and they really had to then cooperate or find out how the Pueblo people were doing it. The earth remains the symbol of the place where people connect.
What was happening right after the revolt was a search for common ground. That common ground was found first primarily through trying to establish an understanding of each other's ways, and also finally, or secondly, through a process of coming to terms with living in this place, which is New Mexico. There was indeed a new kind of Spaniard, primarily an individual who was looking indeed to make New Mexico their home.
After the Spanish returned, they recognized Pueblo lands through a series of land grants. This legal recognition of our lands, the center places of our world, would be crucial to our existence in the centuries to come.
Under the Spanish flag, we were well protected under the laws of the Indies, which were Spanish policies. We were given land grants, which we still have today, cannot be touched by any government.
But reaching an accommodation with the church was far more difficult. The clergy and civil authorities still sought to replace our traditional beliefs with Christianity.
Again, there was a reassertion of Catholicism and the pressure to convert. A number of different pueblos attempted to convert outwardly and yet at the same time practice their own traditional native religious practices as they had always done. And that, of course, varied from pueblo to pueblo. Each pueblo evolved and developed their own kinds of strategies in relationship to the specific kinds of things that they were faced.
We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only Son of
Even
God,
to this day, my grandmother will recite the Catholic prayers in Spanish. She'll say them in Spanish like before she goes to sleep. But yet, my grandmother will go to the kiva and she'll dance, and when she really wants to pray, she prays in Indian. She prays in Tiwa.
One of the things that we can be thankful for is a foresight of what our forefathers did to take our religion underground, so that what we know of today, what has been preserved, our language, our ritual, our ceremonialism, our songs, that they took all of that underground and developed a level of secrecy that still is very much a part of our way of life, so that much of what takes place as the most meaningful in our lives ceremonially is often closed to the public, is often performed at nights.
While the Pueblo peoples and most Hispanic settlers depended on subsistence agriculture, there was money to be made in New Mexico through trade. Trade with the same Comanches, Apaches, and Navajos whose attacks threatened the colony's survival. Every autumn, a great trade fair was held outside of Taos Pueblo. Human beings were one of the most important commodities at these trade fairs. In 1776, the going rate for an Indian girl between 12 and 20 years old was 2 horses and a blanket. Young men were substantially cheaper.
The Comanches would take captives, Pueblo men and women, and they used people as a sort of medium of trade with the Spanish for goods that they wished to obtain. And many times they would trade with Plains tribes for the captives that the Plains tribes held. Those captives were then inducted into the Spanish households. And this really is where the Hinacero and Mestizo population began to blossom in New Mexico during that century.
Historically, Genizaros have referred to detribalized Indians that were captured and ransomed by the Spaniards and brought into New Mexico and placed in mission communities, select mission communities throughout the state. Genizaros are Indians that settled into permanent communities, but they bridged 2 worlds, the Hispanic world and the Indian world.
Most Pueblos had achieved a stable relationship with the Spanish government, the Catholic Church, and their Hispanic and Genízaro neighbors. This stability ended in 1821 with Mexico's independence. While the Mexican period was short, it was marked with the loss of Pueblo lands.
The Mexican period, for all intents and purposes, was a very dire period of time for Pueblo people because of the change in the way that Pueblo people were viewed, and also with regard to the way in which Pueblo lands were handled. They were no longer looked upon as being special, and as they had been with regard to the case of the Spanish colonial laws in that period of time. They were viewed as being just the same as any other Mexican citizen. In some ways, the selling of land or the loss of land began to really occur extensively.
Dissatisfaction with the Mexican government was not restricted to the Pueblos, and in 1837 an alliance of Pueblo leaders, Genízaros, and Hispanics flamed into armed rebellion in Santa Cruz and Chimayo. The revolt was crushed. Its Genízaro leader, José González, who for one brief moment had been New Mexico's only Indian governor, was executed. But the conflict between rich and poor would continue, and would become even more severe after the Americans invaded New Mexico in 1846.
Well, I'm very lucky to have a grandmother who listened to many of the stories of her grandparents and her great-grandparents. One time when I was a little girl, I went into her bedroom and I saw a saint, and it's always the saint that I thought was the ugliest because it was, well, you know, when you're a child, it was kind of burned out looking, and you can't really see the face and you can't see the eyes, but it's a figure of a saint. And I asked my grandma, I said, how come this saint looks so ugly? How come you keep it and you have all these other saints? And she told me that that was a saint that was thrown out of the church during the rebellion of 1847.
The rebellion of 1847 that took place here at Taos Pueblo was a result of our Taos Pueblo people here having very strong feelings regarding the imposition of a different way of life again here in this part of the country. Our Taos Pueblo leadership here took a very serious stand about the takeover by the United States government of this area.
The last armed struggle of the Pueblo peoples began in January 1847 under the leadership of Tomas Romero from Taos Pueblo. At dawn, a group of Pueblo men, Hispanics and Genízaros, surrounded the house of the American governor. Instead of fleeing with his family, the governor stayed, only to be killed and scalped by the angry crowd. 5 more Americans in Taos died that day, and as the news spread, so did the rebellion to Arroyo Hondo, Mora, and other parts of New Mexico. Armed with artillery and modern guns, the U.S. Army set off from Santa Fe to answer this challenge to American authority. In battles at La Cañada and Embudo, a poorly armed group of Pueblo men and Hispanic farmers was easily defeated and forced to flee back to Taos and the fortified Pueblo which had protected them so many times from Comanche raids. The Americans were not intimidated by the thick adobe walls. They surrounded the Pueblo and deployed their artillery and began to reduce the village to rubble.
Many of the women and the children here took refuge within the interior of the large Pueblo structures. Tunnels were dug from one room to another in order to get to the deeper part of the village as the soldiers stormed the walls of the village.
On the second day, the defenders gave up and sent the women and children to the church, but any hopes of sanctuary were quickly dispelled by cannon fire.
And so when the soldiers came in, there was a lot of fighting that occurred. Fighting broke out, and somebody set the church on fire. They started throwing the saints out because they didn't want the saints to burn. And one of my aunts, or one of my other uncles, caught that saint, and that's how we have that saint.
Over 150 people died, and the Taos Revolt ended. The American conquest of New Mexico was complete.
The religious leaders were taken to Santa Fe under the pretense of negotiations and talks with the representatives of the United States government. Our people never saw these religious leaders again. These men were all hung by the neck until death in Santa Fe.
The American conquest of New Mexico did have one benefit: a respite from violent raids by nomadic tribes, which allowed the Pueblo population to increase once again after reaching its lowest level in history in 1850. 7,000 survivors in a world that once contained 50,000 people. Unfortunately, the practice of Indian slavery was accepted and continued by the Americans even after the Civil War and the freeing of the slaves. American progress finally made an impact on New Mexico. Mining towns popped up overnight, forests were cut down to build houses, and Jemez Pueblo lost its mountains. The transcontinental railroads linked the nation and cut pueblos in half.
As I grow up, being old enough to ride horses, I used to herd horses in towns right along the railroad. I used to see passenger couldn't come. I used to gallop over there with my horse. I used to go right alongside the railroad, and when people started waiting at me, I had a long hair, and everything I wore was handmade. And I have always carry a bow and arrow in my back to ride around the side of the railroad. But that's those people too. Look at that little Indian, I guess they say.
The influx of people following upon the railroad, and even before, also served to reduce the land base that the Pueblo peoples have been accustomed to using. A lot of Pueblos, which had traditionally been left alone to graze their horses and cattle, their stock, on certain areas, lost those areas to the aggressive expansionist activities and policies of new ranchers.
Along the Rio Grande, the new Anglo-American immigrants pushed Hispanic farmers off their lands. U.S. courts did accept the old Spanish land grants to the Pueblos and to their Hispanic neighbors. All that was required was a simple survey and a review of the grant, a simple procedure that was used to defraud Pueblo people and Hispanics out of hundreds of thousands of acres.
The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo theoretically ended the Mexican-American War, and as provisions of the treaty, the rights of the Pueblo people were to be protected and respected, just as they had been under the government of Mexico.
The Pueblos were legal citizens, but there were some disadvantages because we were not recognized as American Indians under the 1834 Trade and Intercourse Act. This was an act which was proposed for other Indian tribes to protect them against land speculators and traders.
The court encouraged the non-Indians to settle into the within the exterior boundaries of the Indian Pueblos. In our case up here, there were something like 3,000 non-Indians who squatted on Indian land, and they really refused to give up and to go out off the reservation even if they were asked.
The government not only stood by as our lands were taken, but actively joined in the theft. In 1906, President Roosevelt created the Carson National Forest. Its heart was the Taos Pueblo's sacred Blue Lake.
Our people belong to Mother Earth, just like the trees, the living things, the water, the mountains, everything is a part of Mother Earth. Blue Lake is a part of the land that our people have used and occupied for hundreds and hundreds of years. It is a link to our origin, a link to our past.
Back, y'all. Let's all come back on camera, everyone. Let's see all y'all's beautiful colonized faces. Let's come back on camera. Let's come back on camera. All right. Okay. All right. That was a great part. Hey, Chief Cheem, what do you think about, this portion of the movie? What do you think about it? Let me know your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts.
Lamback, I'm feeling full from all those snacks and meals, but on the thoughts, right? Yeah, like the U.S. conquest saw even continued further colonization, right? To the point where, there is this type of, and I don't think we're gonna get to finish the documentary, but I hope y'all finish the documentary. But there's like this point, like in the end, I believe, I don't know if we already went over it, but like where one of the Indigenous Pueblo people, they say, oh. All right. Well, one of the Indigenous people. Now, I'm a little spoiler alert. They mentioned something about like their own prayers being recited in, like it's their cultural like religion, right? And it's not this colonizer religion. And she tries to describe it to their daughter, right? But it's like undescribable, and like she couldn't even begin to describe it. Even in the native language, right? Because it is such a sacred like practice and culture that has just been stripped away from them by each and every single one of these Europeans, whether regardless of whether it was the Spaniards or the the Americans, right? So it just goes to show like how regardless, we have to sever that trust, right? As the colonizers severed their own relationship with the land, recreate that our own relationship with the land and sever that trust with them. So yeah, land back. What about you, Sergeant Bear?
Land back. Yeah, I got a few quick things to say. Keep donating, y'all. I believe we need like $80 more and then we'll reach our goal. So keep donating. But in regards to like the language, yeah, like it's awesome to like look back at our indigenous languages, not only here, but like all of our other colonized, brothers and sisters, but like our languages are so like complex and beautiful, and our words are long and so different from like English is just like quick, like just it's so awesome, and it's you can't describe it. Exactly, you just can't describe it. Like we don't have like words for genocide or things like that because we didn't do that, and so I guess I wanted to say a few things in regards to like in regards to like the saints and so on, because I know that like our like manifestations of like deities and things like that. I don't want to say God, since we it wasn't a god, it was like a manifestation of like nature and so on, like those like still lived on in our saints. And it made me think about language as well, because like we still like because there's like some words in English and in Spanish that are like nahuatl, like avocado, like chicle, chocolate, like those are like, it's still with us to this day. That underground survival of our like culture is still with us to this day. And then another thing I want to talk about was like the train and the expansion, and like we literally read about that in Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, like how like the expansion of the train, the metal horse and whatever, like it destroys the land, and it it messes things up. It destroys the land, and the buffalo, and just our relationship with nature and so on. But gonna move it along for y'all. Don't want to take up too much time because I know y'all are about to spit some fire as well. So let's get some X's, put an X in the chat. Again, 1 minute to respond, and then when you hear the ding, gotta move it on to the next person. But all right, let's drop some X's, y'all. Let's drop some X's. Yeah. Oh, and then shout out to, the reparations and donations. Thank y'all. I believe there was like 100 from someone. Okay, we got 2 X's so far. Chief Oju.
Hey, I'm back. It's me again. Yes, this part seeing like this, especially the United Snakes, expanding onto the Pueblo's land now afterwards. It just shows that like no matter which colonizing European country they came from, they were practicing the same methods, and sometimes different ones are maybe more ruthless than others. But you see just the same tactics and methods in order to make sure that they had control over the indigenous people. And it was kind of just it was interesting to see too how like how you talk about Sergeant Bear, that with the language stuff, and that like after the Mexicans go away, the Spanish still remains, right? And then I'm just thinking of like, that grandma who speaks Tiwa, English, and Spanish, and and like thinking how, man, we have some amazing, brilliant brains, but it's being wasted on this colony. And we got to use our mind power for ourselves. We are too brilliant for all this BS. So yeah, I am back.
Perfect. Ooh.
Okay, Oju.
Yeah, all right. Next, Chief Jucha.
Laying back. I want to just echo first off what Chief Oju just laid out brilliantly. But also really just an understanding, I guess, and also an appreciation of like the struggles that the ancestors have gone through, right? For centuries. Like I think it was Chief Oju that like had noted like this time difference, right? Like the time like 1600s to 1800s, 1900s, 2000, like that's such long time. That's generations after generations. But yet still, right? Like the struggles against colonialism, against white power is still there. And it, is that is what we are doing here, right? We're continuing that legacy of the anti-colonial struggle, continuing that legacy against white power, continuing against these colonizers, right? And really it's an impression of like what we do, you feel me? Like understanding that where there is this like wrong, right? We can like there is no revolution outside of an anti-colonial revolution because these atrocities will be corrected. But
I'm back. You was cutting out there, Chief Jucha, but I'm sure it was brilliant as always. But we're gonna go ahead and move it to our last X, which is Comrade Free. Yes, Cali Hammer, shoot through.
I'm back. Yeah, I want to unite with everything that was laid out. Especially like with Sergeant Bear said about like the railroads that divided through the Pueblo land, and also like in a way sense like also divides like the Pueblo community, and that like still manifests today. Like I mean, still the colonization is rampant, like with freeways and borders, just furthering the division of colonized people. And also like at the part of the documentary where they said that they traded in Pueblo girls for like 2 horses and a blanket, and following that with like young Pueblo men were traded in for cheaper, just so it shows like how colonization like really like dehumanizes colonized people, and the whole trade of things. And it's like really sad knowing that the legacy of the Pueblo people, like with the whole revolts and everything, still, land back.
Land back, Comrade Free. Yes, it's pretty saddening. I hope y'all got a box of tissues next to y'all. But anyways, we're gonna push it to our last little bit. Let's also push these last few bit of donations. We almost at our goal, y'all. So let's push that liberation, let's channel this, this grief, this sorrow, these feelings right into our liberation, which will ultimately get us free and further that anti-colonial struggle. We are that continuation of that anti-colonial struggle, I think, as Chief Juche said. So yes, let's go ahead and turn off them cameras and get ready for this finale, y'all. Land back.
At the first snow one winter in 1893, a white man came and took all of us on a train to a new kind of village called Carlisle Indian School, and I stayed there 7 years. They told us that Indian ways were bad. They said we must get civilized. I remember that word. It means be like the white man. It was a warm summer evening when I got off the train at Taos Station. The first Indian I met, I asked him to run out to the Pueblo and tell my family I was home. The Indian couldn't speak English, and I had forgotten my Pueblo language. All this time, I was a white man. I wore white man's clothes and kept my hair cut. I was not very happy.
The federal government decided that maybe they did have some responsibility for educating Indians to become Americans. So they built these boarding schools, removed, for the most part from reservations, and brought children there, severed from their parents, and to get them away from their own cultural influences and make them into little Americans.
In those experiments, especially in the 1880s, when the Dawes Act said we will detribalize Indians, and I think Theodore Roosevelt put it well. He said the Dawes Act was like a mighty machine. It pulverized family and culture. The manifest destiny of the nation has moved up to and sometimes over or through Indian people.
Like the Spanish before them, the American conquerors decided that Pueblos could only progress if our religion was eradicated. A new wave of missionaries was unleashed, only this time they were Protestants. And rather than missions, they built schools to teach our children how to speak English and reject the ways of their mothers and fathers as pagan, bestial, and half animal.
When the Americans began to settle in with their own mission of civilizing Indians and making them good little Christians. So by 1860s, they decided to bring the missionaries, who were apparently in competition with each other, different kinds of denominations, in competition with each other to get their own territory of Indians, to civilize and Christianize.
Oh, my father sang, he was singing all the time. And so he said one day there was these young women missionaries coming with a little box, he said, and it was a Victrola. And so my mother went to the door and that she said, I'm sorry, but we're Catholics. And so that my father said, oh, let them come in, let them come in. They have a music box. I like to hear music. He says, let them come in. And we're not going to be contaminated. If we didn't know any better, we might, we might, turn and so then she let them in, and so that they started playing that little music. And of course I sat, he said, I liked it. He said, I sat listening to the music, and they were talking to us about God, and of course they don't understand that we know God more than they do.
At the beginning of the 20th century, our lands, our religion, and even our children were all under attack. The modern world, with all its wonders and problems, began to invade once isolated pueblos. the myth of the vanishing American Indian was created. It was only a matter of time, they said, before native cultures were swept away by the march of progress. The modern world had arrived at our doorsteps in trains, cars, and tourist buses, as anthropologists, photographers, and visitors flocked to see our quaint customs before they disappeared. But our people refused to vanish because they knew the beauty of the Pueblo way of life.
Generosity, unselfishness is one of the greatest values that our Indian people taught, and especially in my family, because my mother and father always say, never refuse a stranger, never refuse a person when they come to the house. Those are the things that we had before Columbus came, before education was put upon us, and those are the things that I call surviving Columbus.
Some of the best moments of my childhood were when I knew that feast day was coming. And all this activity would be going on, and I would, of course, have to be a part of helping to make the bread and sweeping the yard and sweeping the plaza, helping to plaster, bring the mud. But when the day finally came, I would get this wonderful sensation of walking through the crowds, hearing the sound, hearing the beat of the drum.
Whether we wanted it or not, the U.S. government decided that our culture, our heritage, would have to be destroyed before we could progress. More boarding schools were built so that all children would be forced to learn the white man's ways and forget those of their parents.
We went to school at Albuquerque Indian School or Santa Fe Indian School. Some went to Haskell and other places. Many of us were taken away from home during the time when our culture was at its strongest peak. Many of the elders were still living, and I feel that by being away from home, we lost out on many of the teachings that our elders would pass on to the people during the wintertime.
Yes, there were some negative things happening in the Indian schools because a lot of them were not allowed to talk the Indian language and punished very severely for speaking them if they were caught speaking the language.
I went to the day school here in San Juan, and then from 5th grade we get sent to the boarding school in Santa Fe. Then I entered Santa Fe boarding school. I didn't like that at all. Nighttime is when it was lonely. When you go to bed, you have nice clean sheets waiting for you, a nice bed. But there's no grandfather, there's no grandma there to sit on their lap and listen to the stories.
Columbus goes back to Europe and claims that he found a new world. What right did Columbus have to make such a claim? Or what proofs did he have that it was a new world that he found? This world was not lost. Our principal needs today are that you eject all non-Indian trespassers off our lands. Instead of reimbursing the Indian for what land a non-Indian holds, why not reimburse the non-Indian trespasser and make him get off? He knows that he is holding land illegally. Only you know that he won't vote for you if you don't kick us into submission.
The U.S. government had taken more than 60 years to realize that we were Native Americans and entitled to the protection of our lands and water rights. It would, however, ignite a legal storm.
Another threat that was faced by the Pueblo people came in the 1920s in the form of the Bursum Bill. What it proposed to do basically was to legalize the rights of squatters on Pueblo lands. It would leave squatters, both Hispanic and Anglo, right where they were by legalizing their rights to the lands they were living on. If it had been uncontested and gone on through the Congress and been signed into law, it would have probably meant the end of Pueblo culture.
The failure of Protestant missionaries to eliminate native religions led to yet another assault on Pueblo life, the Religious Crimes Code. In direct violation of the Constitution, the U.S. government made our religion illegal.
Until the old customs and Indian practices are broken up among these people, we cannot hope for a great amount of progress. The secret dance is perhaps one of the greatest evils. What goes on I will not attempt to say, but I firmly believe that it is little less than a ribald system of debauchery.
Our most fundamental right is threatened and is actually being nullified. Our religion is sacred and is more important to us than anything else in our life. The religious beliefs and ceremonies and forms of prayer of each of our pueblos are as old as the world, and they are holy. We Pueblo Indians have not consented to abandon our religion.
The government was tempering with something very deep and sincere in the minds of the Pueblo people, because the religion, the ceremonies, the dances are at the heart of who we are, you know, and if you start messing with that, people are going to take care of themselves and protect themselves. So very often what happens is, you know, the intent is one thing, but the result is just the opposite, because it just forces people to clam up even more, to guard themselves even further than ever before.
The leadership of the All-Indian Pueblo Council and widespread public support defeated these threats. And by the 1930s, the policy of the Bureau of Indian Affairs under John Collier had changed. For the first time, the BIA admitted that it was good and honorable to be an Acoma, a Zuni, a Hopi. But at the same time, the Bureau of Indian Affairs tried to impose its political system and federal rules and regulations on our way of life.
Out here at Laguna, that was a time that they recall when their sheep had to be driven into pits and slaughtered because of the drought that occurred, but in their own minds they were able to manage that drought by rotation of the sheep through various pasture lands. But somebody else came in and imposed certain quotas and limitations on grazing capacity that were external, but yet they had to live with them. So that was a great period, a great time of devastation.
My grandfather used to always talk about the survival of Indian people, and he would always say that there's no question that we as Indian people are going to survive, but the more important question that we should be asking ourselves is how. And that our answer to that how is the extent to which we continue to maintain the rights and powers of a sovereign entity.
Like other Native Americans, the Pueblo peoples defended the United States in its wars. At home, women and children pitched in to support the boys in the front and the war effort.
On Bataan, I was with the 31st Infantry Regiment. We were ambushed. Machine guns started firing all around us and we hit the ground.
By the time I looked up, there were Japanese guards all around us with their rifles pointed at us. And then they walked us. We walked, the group I was with, for 3 days. We walked and walked and walked and walked. I came back. We could not vote. And then I asked myself, why did we go, why did they accept so many Indians, drafted, you might say, to be in the armed forces when they're still wards, when we are still wards of the government?
We had hoped that World War II would end all possibilities of other wars, but it didn't come out that way, and I thought that if any of our boys had to go to other wars, they should have the right to vote for the people who sent them out there.
We had to sue the state of New Mexico before we got the right to vote in 1948. But the changes set in motion by World War II would have an even more profound impact on the Pueblo world. The Pueblo people paid an additional price to defend the country. Lands from San Ildefonso Pueblo were taken to create Los Alamos National Laboratory, the top secret research center which developed the atomic bomb. Uranium was discovered at Laguna Pueblo, and bulldozers, earth movers, and dynamite created a vast pit mine.
When the armed forces veterans came back, returned home, in the absence of farming, people began to work outside of the pueblos. Los Alamos was established as a wartime project, the Manhattan Project. So, at least for the northern pueblos, a large number of Pueblo people began to work at Los Alamos, both men and women.
Many had sold their livestock during the uranium boom because they, I guess, couldn't handle livestock and a full-time job. So now, often I hear, I wish I hadn't sold my livestock. I envy you because you still have livestock. But that was another thing that the old timers used to tell us. Don't ever sell your livestock because it's food on your table and clothes on your back when the going gets tough.
In the 1950s, the U.S. government attempted to terminate its treaty responsibilities for all tribal people and turn administration over to the states. At the same time, the Bureau of Indian Affairs began a program to relocate Indians to urban centers across the country.
I have an uncle who was part of that relocation program who has lived in Oakland for over 40 years. Their feeling at the time was that they were going to do the best they could for their children. But one of the devastating outcomes of that is the offspring has rejected their parents and are very bitter towards their parents because they never gave them an opportunity to learn about Cochiti, never having an opportunity to learn the language.
I think that until the 1970s, not only Indian policy by the federal government, but in a way the reality of making a living or finding a way to stay in the Pueblo was very difficult. Policy said, go away. In 1950, it was, we take you away with the relocation and termination policies.
The U.S. government's efforts to destroy native cultures finally ended in the 1970s, with the recognition that we were capable of determining our own destinies. The return of Taos's Blue Lake marked the first time the U.S. government actually gave land back to a native people, rather than just providing compensation. This victory capped a 60-year-long struggle by a community determined to maintain its sacred relationship to the land.
It wasn't until the 1970s that Blue Lake was finally given back to the Taos Indians. It was a time of celebration. I remember seeing my grandmother crying and my grandfather crying in the house, and it was at night when we heard the story and heard the news, and they were crying, and they said we never have to worry about people desecrating our area. And I remember my older brother and I, David, we were flashing the lights off and on the porch light because we were so happy.
Blue Lake, a symbol of perseverance, because indeed this was a very strong symbol of a people enduring great hardships, great difficulties, and persevering in what they wanted done in a way of justice for our people, justice for Indian people.
While the sacred Blue Lake was returned, other sacred areas were taken. The Yakima people have come to worship in the starkly beautiful lava flow of the Malpai since our pueblo was built over 1,000 years ago. Yet in 1987, these sacred places were made part of a national park and exposed to the influx of tourists.
Land is critical to the survival of the Pueblo people in this day and age because, as elders have put it, unless we can bequeath to the children a place on which they may plant their feet, as well as their crops, or whatever they want to plant, then the community will dissolve. Then they'll scatter like leaves in the autumn.
For centuries, our ancestors have successfully defended our culture, religion, and lands against the attacks of the Spanish, Mexican, and American governments. But today, we face perhaps our greatest challenge: how to maintain our existence as Pueblo people in a rapidly changing world replete with alcohol, drugs, AIDS, urban encroachment, and television. At the same time, the traditional roles of Pueblo women are changing as they too enter the workforce.
When I was growing up as a child, I remember that the role of a woman being in the home, being the nurturer, taking care of the family. But as time changes, I see women getting more involved in the working field, getting education, and because of socioeconomics, we have more single parents that need to get out and work. Now we have more women working in the Pueblo here.
The role of the women has changed drastically with times, with even the education that women have gotten, and the career that they want, and then to try to be a part of Indian life. It's a very difficult role to have.
It's extremely critical that Indian women hold on to and maintain our lives that involves the traditional aspect of being Indian, because if we don't, then we're going to lose it completely, because the woman is the most important part of the home when it comes to the teaching of children. And if we're going to have our children continue this way of life, then it's up to us as mothers and teachers to instill all of that in our children.
At the same time, traditional family roles are changing. Our culture is also being threatened by an even more severe problem: the loss of our native languages.
Language is being lost by the people, and when that happens, we have to worry and wonder about how long our traditional dances our songs and our prayers will continue to survive. The qualities that help the Pueblo peoples to survive with their culture up till today is, first, religion, their native religion. And in order to have their native religion, they had to have a language. So these are the two outstanding qualities that help the Pueblos to survive, religion and language. You need one to operate the other.
It's very hard to be from a community where language is so important, where custom and tradition are so important, and not be a part of it, not to have grown up in it. To not know the language, though, is really difficult. I used to talk to my mother about this because I would ask her about language. I would ask her, what are they saying when they say those, when they pray? And she would try to explain it to me, and then she would say, I don't know the words. She said, she said, I know what they mean, but I can't explain it in English. And she said, I don't even think I could explain it in my own language because those are words that are so special that they feel awkward in my mouth.
That's good. That's real good. Okay, now that you know that prayer, you have to go every morning and throw cornmeal. Okay? Mm-hmm. I think they can learn how to pray the right way in Indian, and I want them to, if they can.
It actually feels good because I feel that I'm learning it, and it just comes to you.
You have to say it too. You can't. We're Sandia Pueblo Indians, and if we don't grow up speaking it, it's our responsibility to learn.
Okay, 10 plus 1, how would you say 11? All of you. Again?
I think for a long time there's been this expressed fear by tribal elders that somehow we were losing something, that as they were pushing their children to get educated, they were at the same time sacrificing their own tradition, their language, their culture.
Ziti. What am I asking you? Ziti. Anybody? Ziti.
I know it would be very sad for me if they do lose the culture, but I still want for them to carry it on. And that's one of the reasons why I try to reinforce this in the classroom. If they can't get it at home, they surely can get it here at school.
If we just maintain to carry our language, carry our cultural practices, that we still can survive next 500 years, that we still can go beyond that to carry our identity. But it's entirely really up to us. Nobody has a power to come and destroy our culture and do away our language. And if we only carry this idea, not backing off, not giving up life, not shunning anything, we still can survive in time to come because we are unique people all the way through history, and we still had to look forward to carry this.
And so we find ourselves on the eve of the quincentennial, faced with some of the greatest challenges that Indian people have ever faced over the last 450 years, and that is how we survive into the 21st century.
It makes me very proud to have the heritage that I do have, because I feel that my people were opposed to Spanish colonization. Later on, U.S. intrusion makes me very proud that my people think that their culture and their traditions are so important. I don't consider myself a citizen of the United States. I don't consider myself a citizen of New Mexico. I am a Taos Indian, and that's what I am. That's my nationality, if you were to call it a nationality. And I'm very proud of my history of resistance. Very proud of that history of resistance.
My hope for Pueblo people is that we're gonna be here in 1,000 years, still very clear and very strong on who we are and why we are. It's mainly that the celebration of humanity will still be very much part of our prayers.
There is hope. It is in what past generations of our people have always said. As long as we keep believing in and living by the ways of our people, we will continue. As long as the story of our struggles, which is like the story of all people who deeply love and respect themselves and their culture, community, and land, is told, we the people will continue.
Even after 450 years, the encounter of the Pueblo peoples with white man's culture continues. What will be our children's future is unknown. Still, we have a genius of enduring, of surviving the descendants of Columbus.
Lamb back, y'all. Let's get back on camera. Lamb back, lamb back.
Lamb back, y'all. That was wild.
Yeah, so let's get ready for this last portion of the discussion. But give me 1 second. But yeah, like I guess what were you thinking about that, Chief Cheem? The last portion of this.
No, yeah, that there was just so much to touch on in that section. It was a pretty long one. This is a pretty long movie trip, but that's okay. What's it called? Like from the beginning, where that man who hated himself because he couldn't talk to his indigenous brother in in his own native language. Like the only thing wrong with him was that he was colonized, and we saw the process of this colonization to the very end, right, or to the 90s, I believe, with that computer. Yeah, it was that's why, and we are still here fighting, continuing that battle for that liberation. We still here, resilient, strong, and we're gonna keep pushing that liberation, y'all. So Sergeant Bear got a little announcement for us at the end, y'all. So stay tuned, okay? Stay tuned. But yeah, that was some of my thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah, excited for that announcement. But no, there was a lot to honestly, there's a lot to unpack. So I'm gonna try to go fast. But so I guess one thing to keep in mind, yeah, they made it illegal for us to practice, our religion and just our cultural practice until I believe 1978. But that's a long time, that's our parents, grew up, right? That was, when they're growing up, right? Maybe some of us too as well, but that is a very long, and that's very recent too. So we have to understand that and keep that in mind. And the boarding school process, them, setting, our youngsters too, that was such a devastating process, very brutal, kill the Indian, save the man. That was their thing. And also, the only good Indian is a dead Indian, right? Despite them fighting, in World War II or whatever, them trying to climb this structure, it's still, it doesn't do anything for us. So that's why we gotta really keep that in mind. No matter what you do within this colonial system, you're not gonna be treated like a colonizer, you're gonna be treated colonized, right? And the only thing, that they want us is dead, or completely wiped out. And yeah, it's another thing, no, it's not that we should, it's unknown, or our futures fate and all that. No, we have to understand that, when we unite to our 4 principles of unity, and actively fight for our liberation, not just like, practicing our culture and so on, right? But also actively, materially organizing, right, with all colonized people, and not just like, kind of just stopping at like performative, with our culture and so on, but going beyond that is important. And that's materially where we, get our land back, but yes, I'm gonna pass it on to y'all. But yeah, let's see some of these X's. I think I saw one earlier from Chief Oju, I believe. Let me see. Yes, Chief Oju, go for it.
Yes, no. What you said at the end, look, hit the nail on the head around culture. That's something I was going to talk about. It's that, yeah, it's got to be more. In the end, like we have to preserve it and realize that there's more to preserve beyond like what our culture is, and that just like earlier in that part when they said the elders said like, don't sell your livestock because that's food on your table and clothes on your back. It just shows that the land provides everything first that you need to survive, and then you can like have your culture, have your society, have your relationships with each other. But you need that land first. You need those resources first so you can survive to practice those things. And so yeah, we have to make sure we realize that, Sergeant Bear, like you were saying. And it's just again, our colonized people will always persevere and move on. We just have to move on, organize to get our land back so that we can move on free and liberated. That's the next step. So yeah, land back.
Thank you for that, Chief Oju, and all of your summations. All right, Chief Aurora, go for it.
Yes, I fully unite with what Chief Oju said, and I also wanted to say, like, they never stopped trying to kill Indigenous people, and like all the way down to like the most insidious ways. It's not always like the way we see it, like when it was televised with the pipeline, when they had all those cops in the shields and the rubber bullets, and they were like killing Indigenous people over the pipeline. That was televised. But they also have like so many reservations that still don't have clean water today. Like, there's no reason in 2021 that Indigenous people should not have clean water on their own land. Like, it's theirs. It's their water. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Like, colonization is so insidious. It's like in the veins of everything. Land back.
Okay. All right, Chief Ren, you're gonna be our last comment. Ooh, so close. All right, go for it, Chief Ren.
I am back. Full unity with what Comrade Aurora said. Yeah, and like I think to take a few things a step further. One, like there's also the fact that they don't even have like grocery stores. Like they don't even have access to food. Like you have to drive miles, like miles and miles to get access to food, right? They make trips to like bigger grocery stores as like a reservation to get access to food. Like they bring whole like cooling containers and pack it and then redistribute it to the entire like reservation or to like multiple houses. So even just that, like, like even the basic necessities aren't met. And yeah, and I think that's what, like, to another comment was like around how, like protecting, not only protecting what culture we have left, but also making sure that it doesn't happen again. But even on top of that, like also making sure that like we are able to have dictatorship over our lives, like our lives, labor, and resources, like point of view number one. And part of that is protecting our religion. You know what I mean? Like that's part of our life. And that's what we're here to do as like in Black Hammer. And like I don't know, like that for me, that part is just there's so many different aspects to point of view number one, like, and that's the beauty of it. Like it's broad for a reason, like, you know, like it encompasses everything. So yeah, I just wanted to like bring that back. And
like really quickly, yeah, like they have to go a long distance to get like groceries, you know, and then also like the prices are purposely like hiked up, like because they know that, you know, those that are leaving the reservation are like desperate to get these resources, and they're like purposely hiked up. But yes, hey Chief Cheem, would you like to announce, you know, this awesome announcement?
All right, Chief Bear, I was gonna give it to you, but that's right. Well, today, thanks to everyone, thanks to y'all and your wanting to get free, we raised $310, y'all. 310, beating our goal, smashing white power, you know, kicking the ASS of the white ruling class. Y'all already know, but yeah. So yeah, Sergeant Bear, you want to go ahead and close this out?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, like just like how we got to think about how like earlier when during the revolt, like they went towards like the churches because they knew like this is like the propaganda machine, right? You know, we got to think about that in terms of like how we function also, like, you know, as a revolutionary organization. You know, we also have to think about our ground game and also our virtual game. So like, yeah, y'all, if y'all are interested, you know, in spreading a revolutionary word and so on, you know, join cyber recruitment. And if you're, you know, want to take down the lies of, you know, this colonial apparatus, join BHT, you know, Black Hammer Times. I already know the baddest.
BHT,
you know.
baddest Black Hammer Times.
Y'all already
baddest
know.
anti-colonial news outlet. Y'all already know. Thank you, Sergeant Bear. Thank you very much. And thank y'all for tuning in. And yeah, y'all make it possible for them next generations to live on with that MF land back. You feel me? So yeah, let's get a land back number. Yeah, you already know.
Let's get a land back,
right.
y'all.
Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Land back.